got a little bit of time for Q&A. We've got about 20 minutes. We've got a bit longer, but just to make sure we finish on time, I'm going to try and stick to 20 minutes as much as possible. Hey, my camera's still off. So yeah, we've been prompting a little bit to post any questions in the Q&A. There isn't very many, but there is one, which is from Georgia, that says, great talks. I'm exploring the role of plant-based diets and iodine intake during pregnancy and its association of offspring neurodevelopment. And there's a question here for the team about whether iodine was considered or supplemented by many or any individuals. Ella and Kaya, I'm convinced we didn't talk about that with participants in the qualitative research, unless I'm wrong. But I'm just wondering, Zainab, there wasn't anything from the quantitative part of the study on that, was there?
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yeah.
So in the questionnaire we do ask, do you mean iodine based in foods or iodine from like supplements? Because in supplements we did ask.
But, yeah.
Sorry, you go first. Yeah.
No, either or. Where sort of the analysis we're doing, we're looking at iodine intake via food, but also supplements is interesting. So if anyone takes kelp supplements, but I doubt that would be very common because there are no sort of guidelines or anything to take iodine during pregnancy, because it's thought that the UK is iodine sufficient, but we're still quite iodine deficient, especially in like what's the word, like childbearing age of women. So I was just interested in iodine intake at least.
So we did collect vitamin data on what vitamins or supplements they were taking, and obviously a lot of people were like, oh, taking a pregnancy, like Pregnacare type supplement. So if any of those contain iodine, then we would have that data. We didn't specifically ask anything iodine related, and even in the food section, most of it is more around diet quality and like types of food, like food groups, and not specifically iodine supplemented foods.
That's totally fine. On that, I guess it'd be interesting to know whether like dairy or like seafood and shellfishes for like and eggs for your iodine sort of rich sources, if there was much intake on that. But I'll let other people talk. It's just interesting. Thank you.
A really interesting question, Georgia. I would really love to hear a bit more about your research as well. Nicola, you've got your hand up, and I don't know if it's in direct response or anything.
It is, yeah. I think something that we haven't mentioned but is really important when thinking about food insecure populations, and something that we certainly hadn't thought about from the outset, kind of coming into this with our academic heads on. We did a lot of PPIE work in the planning around the questionnaire. We had originally wanted to do more detailed diet data collection, so something more along the lines of a 24-hour recall, to be able to look more at the kind of nutritional properties of the diet. So we would have obviously been able to look at something like iodine and other micronutrients in more detail had we gone down that route. But there was strong pushback from the people who had lived experience of food insecurity in pregnancy, for a couple of reasons. First of all, it needed to be something that could be completed paper-based, so not reliant on computer-based diet recall methods. And this was to address some of the digital exclusion that people in our kind of most targeted group, the food insecure group, might be experiencing. So we found it really challenging to find tools that could look at more detail, at kind of more detailed diet data that could be completed on a paper-based format. And the other pushback, which is the one that we now looking back is really obvious, but at the time we hadn't really thought about, was around recalling food during a specific period. So something like the 24-hour recall. And our PPIE members were really open and honest with us that they would lie in that situation, because they were really concerned that if it looked like they weren't eating much or weren't eating anything, because some days they said they didn't eat at all, they wouldn't feel comfortable sharing that information, even with the research team, in case it triggered a referral to social services. And some of the people in our PPI group had had experiences with social services in the past, and that throughout all of the discussions around accessing their data and questionnaire completion, there was a lot of concern around, taking part in the research potentially triggering an indication that they weren't coping and some sort of referral to social services. So we had to change quite a lot of our materials to be really explicit about who was going to be able to see the data they were sharing with us, and the kind of data flows and what would and wouldn't happen under different circumstances. So we reverted to more of a diet quality tool, which the PPIE group are much more comfortable with, because it's over a longer period of time. It's not asking about everything they eat, but just have they eaten these specific types of foods within the last kind of month? How often did they eat them? But I think it's an area for further research around food insecurity in pregnancy. I think it's an issue for food insecure populations overall, but in this particular population where there's issues around child removal and social service involvement, it's a really delicate area that we really need to understand. Do we need to know more detail about the more detailed diet data? And if we do feel that that's required from a research perspective, then how do we do that in a way that we get genuine data that isn't made up because people are worried, or that doesn't cause stress or anxiety? So I think it's a real challenge. It's a real challenge, and it's the area of the research design that we struggled with the most, and probably spent the most time kind of discussing and really trying to identify how do we do this in a way that doesn't exclude people or add to stress or pressure. But yeah, thanks for bringing that up.
No, yes, thank you for that. I hadn't even considered that either. So yeah, that's a really something. I guess the work side, it's like secondary data analysis, so there's no sort of involvement of public and patients. So that's a really interesting thing to like think going forward. Thank you for that. Really helpful.
Thanks, Georgia. There's a couple of questions around linked to the work on breastfeeding, so Gina's project in specifically. So I'm just going to take a couple of those at once. So I'll start with Sally's, which is what was the thinking from mums who felt there was a financial cost to breastfeeding? I'm just wondering if mums were thinking they needed to eat more or expensive foods to make milk. Gina, do you want to tell everybody a little bit more about the financial costs that mums talked about? Oh, sorry, I think you're on mute.
Yeah, so through the interview with the moms who breastfed their babies and expressed that they also experience food insecurity, mostly some of them mentioned that they don't have enough money to buy the food that they needed. So yeah, so to be honest, and there was not really much the discussion about like they needed to eat more or expensive food to make milk at all. They just say that they kind of like struggle day by day to find the food, and they kind of make use of that whatever in the cupboard to make food for like today, kind of like so that they can feel that they have enough to express the milk. Yeah, so that's, yeah, I think that's mostly from the interview that around the woman who breastfed, and also under the financial constraint from our study. But yeah, so not really anything that they say that they have to like eat expensive food or something. They just like express that they really wanted to eat like healthier food, but then they couldn't be able to.
Yeah. Okay. No, that makes sense, Gina. Sally, so you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I suppose it was just that sort of, it sounds like what's coming across is that mums were feeling that they needed to eat more expensive food or better foods or more healthy foods in inverted commas, to be able to produce enough milk for their babies. And I think these are the sort of myths that we come up against all the time, in that people think, oh, well, it'd be better to just give formula because that's a better quality than my milk, for example. And these are the things then that women are then turning to more expensive formula milks. And like someone else I noticed to put in the chat that was related to the commercial determinants. And, you know, it's just such a huge barrier for women at the moment, and families, and the work we need to do is around educating them so that they feel confident to know that, you know, it in a positive way that might feel quite negative to them at the time, is that their milk will be amazing because their milk will take everything from the body that they need, and even if mum is, you know, undernourished, she will still be able to provide, you know, good milk, enough milk for her baby, should I say. So it's, yeah, that there's a real disconnect between the sort of information that women have or families have at the moment, about the truth around, you know, their ability to make milk, but also against that, the belief that the more expensive brands are better for their babies than their own milk.
Yeah, that's a really important point. I'm just wondering, Kaya and Ella, did anything come up even peripherally around the core food, pregnancy and me qualitative work around, you know, infant formula? Did any of the women we spoke to, did they reflect at all?
I think there was talk about the cost of formula, especially when people had older children, that they knew about that. But most of the people we spoke to were still pregnant, so it wasn't a direct part of what we were talking about. And so, yeah. What about you, Kaya? Do you remember? Do you recall?
No, just the bits that stand out were often around when we're talking about Healthy Start scheme and how the cost of the payment wouldn't cover a tin of whatever formula that they were feeding, or would only, you know, wouldn't last the month until the next payment. So it definitely came out in the cost element, but that's the main part that I remember.
Gina, sorry, I'm going to go back to you.
Yeah, thank you. So so thank you for the thoughts on that. There's some women also like mentioned that the cost of formula is like very high, and then they have to move to the cheaper brand, for example, like the Audi brand or something like that. And some of the relief that their children, their babies, like have not didn't have any issue like switching brand at all. And that's such a relief that they said that the baby is not really like fussing around like formula, like different formula and stuff like that. And yeah, I think it came across a few interview as well, and women said that they had to choose like cheaper brand, and then they have to switch like few different brands in order to get the right one, like cheaper one and right one for their situation as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Gina. Thank you. Sorry, I'm just gonna move us on a little bit. So there's a question from Fatima about whether the part of our research looking at food insecurity and supplement use is published yet, and I guess that's an easy one to tackle because no, we're working on publications at the moment. Zainab, would you like to say anything more about plans published before I look at a different question?
Do you mean publications imminently or maybe next year? So yeah. So from the quantitative side, we're working on firstly the prevalence and sociodemographics one right now. But like I said, we do have 2 more papers, maternal and infant outcomes. The third one, a dietary quality paper. We have a student that is going to be doing her dissertation on some of the work. So that'll probably be later next year. Maternal and infant outcomes, we're going to try and do what we can, but I am going on maternity leave at the end of the month. So yeah, as soon as we can, as a team, yeah.
And I mean, even if it's not, if we move aside from academic publications in terms of making findings accessible, that Nicola, I'm sure I'm not speaking out of turn by saying that there would be an intention to produce other outputs as well as academic papers in terms of making those findings accessible, wouldn't there?
Yeah, so I think Ella and Kaya both mentioned some of the work that we're doing to try and develop different outputs for different audiences. So obviously the papers are important to get published so that it can inform future research, but it's important to get the message out to kind of policy, practice, public, everybody, all the different groups of people where it's important to share the findings of the research. So we have got some funding to start working on that from a policy perspective, to try and get the policy messages out to the right people. And we've prepared a funding application to do more kind of public messaging as well around the results of the research, which hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll get. And that again will all be, we're trying to complete all of the kind of outputs next year, so that everything, the academic papers, all of the kind of other methods of communicating the research will hopefully all be completed and in the public domain in 2026.
Thank you, Nicola. So I think there's probably time just for the final question, which is probably going to put everybody on the spot, which is from Rachel, which is, I am a new social prescriber working within a community midwifery team. What advice would you give me as I set up this new service in the area? I think, which is a great question. I wonder if it's worth going to each set of speakers, or you probably all going to hurt me for that. But in terms of what advice you would give, I guess, from that component of the work. Ella, Kaya, from the qualitative work then, is there one piece of sort of advice that you think is fundamental?
Ella and I have been having a little behind the scenes WhatsApp to try and coordinate this a little. But yes, I guess the things that we came out of the qualitative work was especially around ensuring that all entitlements were applied for. So there were members of our sample who didn't know that they were entitled to Healthy Start, for example, until really late on. So making sure that all the applications that are available to people have been applied for, but also that ability to come back and see you again whenever they need you, if circumstances change, because there were people kind of dipped in and out of entitlements, and that was both in terms of the benefit system and Healthy Start eligibility. The other things that really came forward were around making sure the appointments are focused on mum, and that the midwifery appointments that they attended very much focused on the health of the baby and making sure baby was okay and growing okay, and actually mum needed a bit of extra support as well, particularly around well-being, and so that would be really important from our perspective, and kind of linked to that ability to build trust with you, and as we mentioned, kind of shame and stigma permeated everything that we've produced as part of this research. And so building trust with people and having that ability to have multiple contact points if possible will be really important for allowing people the space to share if they're struggling. But also asking the question. I've got one comment from the questionnaire that really stuck out to me, where somebody was 36 weeks and said this was the first time anybody had asked them about food. And so just asking people is a great start. Ella, Steph, anyone else want to add?
I don't think I have anything. That was beautifully.
Thank you.
Ella, anything from you?
No, nailed it. Thank you.
I would just say,
yeah.
could you get in touch with us? Because one of the things that we're wanting to look at is next steps. So thinking about, how we don't want to end this with producing the outputs, even the kind of policy and public related outputs. We want to continue to work in this space and think about future research and how we can provide the evidence to support practice. So if you, and one of the high ranking recommendations is around this kind of community support workers and social prescribers. So if you could get in touch with us, and we could follow up the conversation and think about, from your experience, what would be the next steps? What do you need to be able to make a difference in your practice? That would be really helpful all round, I think. So yeah, encourage you to keep in touch.
Thank you, Nicola. Gina, Zainab, Heather, do you have anything to add to Kaya's answer before I hand over to Amelia as co-chair?
No.
No, I agree with all of their points. Yeah, definitely, especially the one around circumstances changing, because we did collect food insecurity data for preconception and pregnancy separately, and people's circumstances do change during pregnancy for whatever reason. So I guess just checking in, just because you've checked in once and they were fine, they might not be fine later on. Yeah.
Absolutely. Gina, anything from your?
Yes, it's just a little bit add from me. So the woman told us that they want some kind of like early support and practical support and support that recognize the whole situation. So I think the biggest impacts that you can make is maybe like check in early and listen and have family access to both the feeding support and financial or like food related helps. Yeah, just from our interview. So it's a kind of emerge from that.
Thank you, Gina. Thank you. Okay, I am going to pass over to Amelia so that you've got plenty of time. Leave this in your capable hands.
Thank you, Steph. Can everyone see the screen that I've shared? Did it work?
Yeah.
Yes, fabulous.
Yeah.
It's very nice for me to be able to close this meeting. I see that we've already got a bit of a network happening, Rachel. Not only are we asking you about next steps, but you've got colleagues from across the region also keen to connect with you around the social prescribing. I'm just wondering, Nicola or Gina or Kaya, who could Rachel contact, if you don't mind, getting her email or dropping an email just in that box so that she knows who to contact. As I close the session, I'd like to say thank you again to all our speakers and thank you to everyone who's attended. It was really interesting, having been part of this, to hear this and to hear the really powerful voices of the women coming across, and I think that's the bit that really resonates with me. As I leave, I want to encourage you to have a look at our Nourishing Futures network. The slide that I am hoping is displaying a QR code to join, and this is free to join. Please do join, and we will definitely be sharing on that, not only our research, but lots of other really useful bits of research for practice as well as academia. Thank you all for coming. Thank you to our partners, which are SPHR, School of Public Health Research, as well as Nourishing Futures Network. One final slide is that we do have an event in January, which might be of interest to many of you on this call, which is around family hubs and promoting oral health for children and for families, particularly those facing multiple disadvantages. This is going to be an in-person venue, has not yet been confirmed, but please do hold the date for Wednesday, 28th of January, already thinking about next year. Okay, have a wonderful Monday. What a good start to the week, hearing about this really, really important work. And enjoy your day and enjoy your lunch. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.